What is empire consciousness? That's solar, that's the sun. A solar period of centralized authoritarian energy which brings more light than the Saturn period. It's a different dasha. It's a different stage. But we're solidly in this modern stage, which, what is the chief element of this modern stage? Tremendous advancement in technology, tremendous advancement in communication, tremendous advancement in information. It's all Mercury. Tremendous advancement in goods moving, in currency exchanges, business. That's Mercury energy. We're in a Mercury dasha right now. So here is what I am postulating. I am saying that the Western adventure of the macro culture of the Western adventure had these dashas. Now, when the deviation entered, when the Western energy entered, big time. Of course, it entered before this now, as I've said previously. It entered in the middle to early 70s is when it entered and then started growing while Prabhupada was still with us. But in spring of 78, that's when it went full bloom or boom. That then, that Western energy, let us correspond that. It must have been present to some degree. Let us correspond it to the dashas of the total culture. So that we can, the question is, what do you foresee in the future? If I say I foresee this, then what's my view compared to somebody else's view if I can't establish it through a logical progression of stages? We need to have a perspective on the current situation. Where are we at currently now? What I'm saying now, just like one of the chief, in fact, there's two chief principles of astrology. One chief one almost everybody knows, even if they don't believe in astrology, they've heard this principle, namely, as above, so below. As in the macrocosm, so in the microcosm. Where the planets were aligned with what stars and what sign was on the eastern horizon at the time of birth, so is that individual that took his first breath and had the planets stamp his astral body at that exact moment of his first breath. There's a correspondence as above, so below, the big macrocosm to the little microcosm. Okay. So I am saying, on the same principle, I'm saying that in the big Western culture, you have these dashas that have been clearly delineated by me. Do you see these delineations? All right. Now, I'm saying that in the deviation, which is Western, because what is it full of? What is this deviation full of? It's full of Western pragmatism. Not simply utility as the principle. Way more than that. It's filled with interpreting things according to what will produce results in terms of my definition of material progress. This is Western pragmatism. So Western culture has entered the deviation big time, very, very obviously. It's filled with, unfortunately, feminism. It's filled with many different energies and philosophies which all have their roots in Western culture, some going back to the time of Francis Bacon, some going back to the time of the French New Thought or Enlightenment period, some going back to the Renaissance, but all connected to Western culture that are not Vedic. Anti-Vedic siddhantas, anti-Vedic philosophies, anti-Vedic processes, anti-Vedic practices, anti-Vedic views and reciprocations. So if you don't buy into it, then you're saying that it's not Vedic. And that is what I'm saying. I don't buy into it. I say it's not Vedic. But what I'm saying is that it's a microcosm of the macrocosm of the West. Therefore, what I'm postulating here is that the dashas that I outlined on the big stage for the West are going to play out on the little stage of the microcosmic deviation. So which one are we in now, and which one are we going to? That's the best way to answer the question, what is the future of the Krishna consciousness movement in terms of what? In terms of the fabricated so-called Krishna consciousness movement, which is now covering the real Krishna consciousness movement, which I'm optimistic about long term. But right now, short term, no. How can you be optimistic? It's being covered big time.
So can you talk about those future dashas, or?
Well, I don't believe that the pure Krishna consciousness movement has dashas.
Okay.
But this Western thing that looks like Krishna consciousness does have dashas because it's a deviation.
Right. So where do you see that going?
All right. We're first, to see where it's going, we have to see where it's in. So what I'm going to, some of the things that I'm going to detail here are going to be considered radical and even controversial. But think about it. This is being presented not as mental speculation. It is being presented as philosophical speculation based on logic and fact. All right, where did our Krishna consciousness movement really begin? I say it began back in India once Prabhupada decided that I'm going to go. Because where was he going? He was going to the West. At that point, he was going to take this unprecedented step of leaving India to bring Krishna consciousness to the West. Now, if his movement has a major deviation transpire, that's not on him. That's on the deviators. But if it does have a major deviation transpire, you don't say it's from Prabhupada as being the cause, but you say that there must be a parallel that goes on until this deviation runs its course and gets crushed, which I believe is going to happen. But what was the first stage of the Western preaching, even including India, but especially then when he arrives in Boston, and then when he goes to Butler, then he goes to New York City, then there's a little bit of a wait, then there's San Francisco, etc. That was the Jupiterian. Now it wasn't deviant then, but as I'm saying, because many of those quote-unquote devotees, of course they are devotees, they were initiated, but many of them turned out to be the deviation, so they have to be traced back to that period. So I'm not talking about Prabhupada here. If someone says, this theory he's presenting, this is very offensive, he's talking about, I'm not talking about Prabhupada. I'm talking about his movement, which was run by his people, which if they elect to misuse their free will, that's on them, which they did. But we have to see that they do have some connection to Prabhupada. So, not a pure connection anymore. But we have to see that they came in 66, 67, etc. That was a Jupiterian period. That was corresponding to the Greek period of the West, since it deviated. Now, if there had been no deviations, we wouldn't be talking about these dashas, because Prabhupada didn't come here to bring any form of Western adventure. He came here to bring the complete alternative to the Western adventure. But since the Western adventure got back in there, we have to see that it never actually left, because they didn't get it out of themselves right from the beginning. So, that first period was that Jupiterian period that corresponded to the Greek period in the macrocosm.